Well, it's tax time again. The time of year when Canadians go through a lot of heartache and pain as they prepare their taxes. And I'm convinced that God hates taxes. Jesus came to do away with death and I believe taxes as well. But where did taxes start from? Where did this mess that we have to deal with, where did it all start? Well, if we read the scriptures, we find out that in Israel, there was a time when they didn't have a king and the nation of Israel didn't have any taxes. And they decided to approach their spiritual leader, who was Samuel at the time. They said, "We want to be just like all the other nations. We want to have a king. We want to have government over us to take care of our problems, and especially our military problems." So Samuel warned them. He used the word take 6 times. If you have a king, he will take the best of your men, the best of your women. He'll take your crops. He'll take your livestock. He'll take your land. He'll basically take. And you'll have a government. You'll have a human oversight, just like the other nations. And Israel, you will regret it. And that's exactly what's happened. We have not just Israel now, but most of the nations on the planet have decided to snub God and embrace big G government, which requires big T taxation. Now, if you look at how people should prioritize their money, you'll see in this diagram here that there are a set of concentric circles. And these circles will give you an idea of how to prioritize your spending, starting with food, clothing, and then shelter, then transportation, and then extras or luxuries. And the Bible is very clear. If we have food and shelter, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich, that is to say, have more than what they need, food and clothing, technically, I guess in Canada, we need shelter as well. But the point here is that the essentials are basically food and raiment or clothing, shelter. Anyway, the point I want to make here is that those are the essentials. And the ones beyond that, transportation and extras or luxuries, they are luxuries. That was the prioritized spending circle that the Bible recommended and continues to recommend in terms of contentment, an absolute level of contentment. But then what happens to that picture is when people decided to shift from trusting a big G God to big G government, there comes an invader, a massive, cruel invader called the taxation system. And the taxation system that we have grown to tolerate, I say tolerate, because it's gotten worse and worse. If you look at this chart here, you see that in 2009, the Alberta top marginal tax rate was 39%, but now it's 48%. And if you compare 2024 with 2009, in 15 years, the taxes have gotten uglier and more complex and more invasive. And furthermore, the Canadian Federation of Taxpayers say that 74% of Canadians feel they're not getting value for their tax dollar. The government spending money on all kinds of unessential and frivolous items. Well, part of the problem comes back to the taxpayers. If we demand all kinds of government services, not I'm just talking about national defense and justice, but if we demand all kinds of educational services, healthcare services, old age pension services, the more government services we demand from the government, the more taxes we're going to have to pay. So as you prepare your taxes for this year and go through the painful process of giving the government money that, frankly, you'd rather not give them, let's just remember what Jesus said about taxes. He said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's." And the other story about taxes recorded in the book of Matthew, who was a tax collector, by the way, talks about Jesus paying the temple tax through Peter. And basically what he said there is, pay what is due when it is due. But God's children are exempt from taxation. Read the story yourself in the book of Matthew. That is to say that the king's kids are tax free. However, so long as we live on planet Earth, and if we continue to demand all kinds of government services and all kinds of government handouts, then we got to be prepared to pay more and more taxes. I must say, I really don't like to pay. So going forward, as that the debt burden is immense in Canada and in the United States, the headwinds from overspending for the past 15, 20, 30 years, the burgeoning debt is out of control. Things are going to collapse, or there's going to be some kind of world war to distract us from the pain that we've caused ourselves. It's going to be nasty. We have to shift from trusting in big G government to bigger G God. By the way, the true God, creator of heaven and earth, for him, $1 trillion is pocket change. He calls things, he commands things into existence. So do what Jesus said. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. God's claim is always the prior claim. Remember, Jesus tolerated taxes, but he will do away with taxes just like he did away with death when he physically rose from the dead. So pay your taxes, do the calculations properly. Don't give the government any more than you need to give them, but give them everything that they legally have a claim on. Because frankly, the Canadian government is very poor, very in debt. So is the U.S. government, very poor and very in debt. But the government of the King of Kings has no debt problem and has infinite resources. In a sense, Christians should model proper, perfect tax compliance, but always pointing everyone to the King of Kings, who has infinite resources and infinite attention to detail like no one else.